This Is Going Well, I Think, with David Cooper. I am David Cooper. It's This Is Going Well, I Think, the show where no one's listening, no one cares, the show where every episode's the last episode. So it's Monday, and we've got a great show for you. In about 30 minutes' time, we will dive deep into an interesting question with an expert. That question, if we want to settle on other planets, what are we going to do? Some people say we got to terraform the planets, convert them into environments that humans can be sustained in, or construct elaborate bases. But one researcher I'm going to talk to says we got to edit our genome to alter our DNA if we want to settle the cosmos, or at least our own solar system. After that, someone who writes a blog called Captain Awkward on the topic of going home to visit your family for the holidays when your family's a bit much. I hope to have a frank discussion with her about that, having recently visited my family. And finally, it's astronomy and physics of the very small and the very large. We'll talk about a particle created using a novel particle beam and the search for new chemical elements. And we'll talk about the very big, including super Jupiters and hot Jupiters. We'll answer the age-old question, would you rather be super, that is really great, or hot? That's the show. A lot of science, should be a lot of fun. And now we're going to jump right into our first interview with foreign correspondent Tony Five, who's got kind of serious news from Manchester, England. But first, this. You know that song, Tony? Tony Five is here, foreign correspondent, to correspond voraciously. Tony, welcome.
Good misting, Mr. Cooper.
Good misting?
Yeah.
What does it even mean?
I don't know. I misspoke, and I'm trying to think of something better to say, but I can't. So, good misting.
That's where we are. We've been out a week. We've been diligently writing, preparing for this show so that we can come back in full force, and all you say is good misting. How was your time away from the show? Tony, when the show doesn't happen, sometimes I worry about you.
I would be worried about me, David. Yeah, it's been hard, really, because I don't really know what to do. It's like, you know, like there's that expression, does a tree fall down when you're not looking at a forest? Does Tony Five exist when there's no David Cooper radio show? Who knows, David?
I hate that I talk about AI every episode of the show, but it is a hot topic. What if Tony is AI? Like, what if?
What if?
I guess I'm asking you if you're, what if you were AI?
I don't know. I mean, I'd definitely try and get my money back off ChatGPT if I was.
Dude, that company is bleeding money. I think Microsoft bought them for what, $9 billion or something? And their costs over the last year were like $15 billion. The computers that run it cost so much money to make it like fast and snappy. Like we're not there technologically where you can just have a computer running, a single computer in a server room, whatever, and it's like, do ChatGPT for me. No, it needs an incredible amount of computing power, and the company is just bleeding and bleeding and bleeding money, and I'll be shocked if they make it 6 more months.
Seriously? So do you not... But Microsoft have bought it though, right? So aren't they propping them up?
I think they invested heavily as a majority shareholder, but I don't think they're technically a part of Microsoft. I could be wrong. I should get these facts straight because we're saying them on a podcast here on a news quote segment. But
you should do, yeah. We really don't have any facts at all, do we, David? One of us should really learn how to use Google, in all fairness. But I know Google have got their own version of stuff coming on to Gemini or something like that. And AI, I don't know, it was really prominent a couple of months ago. Everybody was talking about it. Now it's kind of died down when they realise AI can't make your breakfast or anything. It just answers questions a little bit quicker.
You kept talking when you said we don't have the facts, and I was going to be like, I have a fax machine right here.
I know you do.
Yeah, they lost $5 billion this year alone because of the massive costs to run it, to program it. It is like, it's the classic IT thing. Like, launch a product to market with no plans to monetize. You know, they charge a $10 subscription fee, but they also just offer it for free. Most people use it for free. Of all the people I've talked to, maybe like 3 pay that $10. Do you pay the $10?
I didn't even know there was $10 to pay to be.
Exactly. So there's a free tier. All you have to do is just like sign on. It's free. So step 1, prop up a company with billions of dollars, offer it for free. Step 2, shrug. Step 3, profit. Like, is that what's happening with ChatGPT?
Possibly. I mean, that's my method. And I did get that method of business from Groupon last year. So I'm pretty sure the guys who founded ChatGPT have just got the same group on as me. And I, for one, stand with them.
Okay, so there is some news in the UK. There's a place called Manchester, which is a weird name because Chester implies a woman's bust, maybe like chest, but then
Chest
it's man.
her.
It's like man,
Yep.
chest, you know? Is that...
Well, I tell you, the Roman origin of that name was from a man that did get stabbed in the chest. Hence why it was called Manchester.
I thought you were going to go into a whole like normal thing.
Yeah. So it was called Manchester,
Yep.
and then it got convened because they used to make a cheese there called Manchego. So it was going to be Manchester, but it finished as Manchester.
That's a Spanish cheese, which I recently bought on the recommendation of someone at a store. Manchego is good cheese. I feel like I lived my whole life not knowing about Manchego, really. And now...
I'm not a fan. Bit rubbery, dude.
No, it's good. It's like a Parmesan, but more interesting.
Are you a cheese fan? Are you a cheeseaholic?
I am a liker of cheese. I am a strong liker of cheese, but I'm not like a cheese lover, if that makes sense.
Do you like the stinky cheese? The ones with the veins in it and all the stinkies?
Yeah, I love blue cheese. My favorite cheese is Roquefort.
Really? Oh, stinky.
You know the green, it's really green cheese. It's not blue cheese, first of all. And second of all, you know that's fungus in there, right? That blue veining is fungus that they inject with like a needle, okay?
Really?
Yeah. But it's the same fungus in the same family as penicillin. Because penicillin...
And gonorrhea.
Gonorrhea is not a fungus. No, antibiotics...
That's not what my girlfriend said.
I hate you.
Carry on.
Antibiotics, I think, are funguses, most of them, which are, bred in a lab, but they trace their lineage from the fungus in blue cheese. And part of the reason that blue cheese lasted so long in the olden days is that the cheese that they infected with the fungus warded off bacteria and predators. So it is fungus, but it's delicious bacteria preventing fungus. And when you think of it that way, it doesn't seem as gross.
Do you ever think, who thought of that? Who thought of, I've got a bit of cheese there in my sandwich. I'm going to take that out and I'm going to shove that in something else to make people better from herpes. How did that happen? Like, I always wonder, when things get invented, like, how? I never think of that. Like, the other day, I remember I told you, do you have a food delicacy there, like cheese on toast, like melted cheese on toast?
Yeah, it's called a grilled cheese.
Grilled cheese. Now, I, for many, many years, believed I invented that.
Cheese toasty. Why do you call them cheese toasties? Side note, but let's continue.
But for many years, one day I remember I was at my parents' house. I was maybe 7. I was grilling toast, some plain bread to make into toast. I flipped it over, and I just had this epiphany. I thought, well, you know what? Cheese melts. I'm going to put some cheese on it. I'm going to melt it. And I did. And I ate it. I was so happy. And for many years, I believed I was like Bill Gates and Microsoft, that I would be the cheese toasty man of the world and I would be famous. It would sell them everywhere. Until I found out that it had already been invented. And I was devastated. I remember being devastated for at least 2 weeks that I'd invented. And I called it toasted cheese on toast, which in hindsight makes no sense, right?
No, I like redundant names like that. In fact, one of our segments, and don't roll your eyes, with their contributor Carmi Levy, is called Time for Science.
Carmi Levy, he's so good. I have a segment with him.
It's called Time for Technology Time. That's the name of the segment.
God's sake. What about Dan Riskin? What's his time called?
The Science Appliance.
Of course it is. Good Lord. And what's our one called? Oh, Foreign Correspondent Tony 5. That's got no rhyme to it, and it's got no reason.
Tony, you're talking about who was the first one to invent blue cheese to antibiotics.
Yeah.
That to me is less baffling than bread. You get wheat, which is it's like a reed looking thing. It looks like a plant that you wouldn't eat. It looks like a shrub that would grow in the side of a river or something.
Yes.
They've harvested it. They mill it. They grind it up into
so it's really fine, yeah.
And then they add it with water.
Right.
And then yeast. Forget even about the yeast. And then they bake it. And then how did that come to be? And it's not just that it happened, because nowadays, okay, food science, whatever, even in the last 2,000 years, they had a better understanding of this stuff. But I'm talking about the original bread makers when they were basically, 1,000 years out from being cavemen or cave women or cave people. How did they come up with bread? I was because I've made a pizza dough before from scratch.
Right.
Well, I guess not from scratch, because to truly make something from scratch, Tony, you must first create the universe. That's, I think, a Carl Sagan quote where he said to create an apple pie from scratch, you have to create the universe. But back to the bread. How did they figure that out?
I made a chicken pie from scratch once.
Okay, you're not answering the question. How did early humans figure out bread? To me, that is baffling.
It's the same with green apples. What makes you go to a tree, pick an apple and try and eat it? It's bright green, man. Why would you do that? No, I think we've diverted from the original topic of the Manchester.
I was trying to look that up right now, and it was Carl Sagan. Are you impressed?
I'm very impressed, yeah. Carl Sagan, he has a lot of anecdotes about apple pies, doesn't he? Was he like an expert on apple pies?
No, he was like,
Martha Stewart.
No, he was a science educator, and
I think he created Contact, didn't he? He wrote Contact.
Yeah, he did.
Well, he based on Contact.
Yeah, but he wrote a lot of great books. He was a physicist, and he, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, was his student, basically. Or his
Can we get him on the show? Can we get Carl Sagan on the show?
I think that might be hard because he's been dead for 10, 15, 20 years. But I will try. I'll reach out to Danny. We're here with Tony 5. We took the word Manchester and spoke about it for 10 minutes. But when we come back, there's some controversial, might you say, news coming out of Manchester, England.
I said in the break, let me Google what controversial means.
Tony 5, our foreign correspondent, has something of meaning, something of substance when we come back. Tony 5 is here, foreign correspondent. He is in London, England, and there is news across the pond. News, breaking. Tony, welcome back.
David, how are we? So, Manchester, probably the second or third biggest populous city after London in the UK, and a viral video. So there's a couple of things that's come of this news story. So, a video was released, and it was a self video from some bystanders or people that had gone on Twitter, TikTok, so on, where it showed an armed police officer. Now, remember, in the UK, armed police officers are rare. Mm-hmm. So they're usually in airports unless they've been deployed to a certain thing. So not all of our police carry firearms here.
They just carry those billy clubs they beat up minorities with, right?
And a whistle, David. Don't ever forget the whistle. So that's going to be the name of this show today. Don't forget the whistle. So basically, the police officer stamps on a guy's head. So the guy's prone. He's on the floor. He's still trying to fight back, but the police officer stamps on his head.
Like now, head stomps him, they call it.
Correct. Anybody can Google it if you go onto X or Twitter or Google and just type in Manchester video. So there's two videos. So the first video was released, I would say, I think Wednesday, Thursday. So when we weren't recording, there was a big video of it. And outrage. It was in every bit. Police should be this. And the police officer was taken off duty. He's a firearms officer in Manchester Police. So firearms are quite elite here. Not everyone carries firearms, as I said. And it was a Muslim, just happened to be a Muslim guy, an Asian, I think with Pakistani family. So there's always these racial undertones. And then people started bringing up George Floyd, even though he's over the pond. And there was this huge controversy. It was on every news cycle. It was on everything. And it had shown this one small segment. You're talking about 15 seconds. Should police be armed? Have police got too much power? Why would you ever want to do that? Okay. Now, on Sunday, the precursor to this video was released. Now, bearing in mind that previous video, MPs had criticised it, which caused civil dissent. So there was people rioting one evening the night before, and there were people protesting.
What was the general sentiment of the people who were upset? Just that the Manchester police are racist, cops are beating down on minorities, and why does he have a gun? Why is he stepping on the person's head? This is an injustice.
Correct. All of the above with a dark racial undertone. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it looked like this police officer just attacked this unarmed man.
Should that be the name of our segment together? A dark racial undertone.
David, if you want to call me a racial undertone, I would love it. In fact, I'm going to change my Tinder name to Dark Racial Undertone. Oh my God, David, sometimes.
How did you feel? Like, were you on the side of the guy suffering or the side of the police?
Police officer.
Okay.
Genuinely speaking, now, there are some people saying when is force, too much force, right? Now, for me, in the UK, I don't know what it's like in the US, but people have lost respect for police officers, especially authority, I feel. And when in an environment where the police are carrying weapons, I think if a police officer tells you to stop, don't move, don't do this, I think if you've got nothing to be guilty of, I think you should comply. I think there is an element of compliance. Now,
what if you've been unjustly arrested or unjustly handled?
But it wouldn't be, would it? It wouldn't be unjustly, because if they found out that it was a mistake or error, you'd just move along. But I think if you turn around and start swearing or shouting or punching a police officer with a gun, I don't expect the police officer to shoot you, but I do expect there to be something to restrain you. And in this day and age, I think with terrorism and anybody being a terrorist, it was unfortunate that this chap happened to be Muslim and overtly Muslim, with a family around who was screaming and screaming, because there was family around as well. But I don't think the police officer was wrong. Now,
wait, you don't think the police officer was wrong to kick him in the head?
Right.
Based on the first video?
Yes, so you saw the first video, kicked him in the head, right.
So wait, no, after you saw that first video, you thought the police officer was justified?
When I saw the first video, I thought the force was excessive, but I thought there is a reason for that. We haven't seen it all.
But couldn't that reason just be abuse of power?
It could be, but I didn't just jump on the bandwagon the same day. So all of the crazy liberals at the time, oh my God, and it was getting viral, and there was people trying to get political power from it. So the opposition in the political parties were saying, this shouldn't be done. Look at what's happened since this new government got in. I mean, the government's been in for 2 weeks.
It's just the actions of one cop. Like, even if it's hard to blame the prime minister for that.
But it incited violence. It incited people who are just the keyboard warriors behind, who haven't been in a situation like this. Remember that these are life or death situations. They happen in nanoseconds. So why the police officer did that? And then we have a format. It's called the IOPCC. So it's the Independent Police Complaints Commission. And it would be investigated. They'd look at all the CCTV. Not all of it was released. And this is what I'm going to come to later on. A secondary video was released maybe 3 or 4 days later, showing the group of people that were arrested beating a police officer. I mean, 10, 15 punches. They broke a female police officer's nose. They'd fought beforehand. They'd punched. And at the end of this video, when they hadn't complied with the tasering and so on, that's when you see the police officer kick the guy in the ground and try and make an arrest.
Once he's already on the ground, why kick the head?
Okay, so this is a fantastic conversation, because you're saying everything that the liberal radio presenters were saying, and I'm saying things that the right-wing hardcore people kind of were saying when the phone-ins, right? And
I'm just asking a question, Tony. Why, if someone has beaten up on the police officers, if he's finally subdued and on the ground, if there's no clear and present danger to the cop in that moment, despite what has happened up until that point, why kick the guy in the head?
That's the question. You said subdued. He wasn't subdued. He was on the floor. Not everybody can be affected by a taser. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's not like in the films where
maybe it doesn't breach the clothing, or
doesn't breach the clothing, or some people have got a natural tolerance for like high pain and they're fine. So he had been tasered. He had got to the floor, but he wasn't subdued. And remember, the police officer's carrying like a submachine gun. He's got 2 hands on the gun. If he was to release any of the hands, you've got a massive chance of that firearm being taken over by somebody else.
I was just thinking of using the butt of the gun on the head, but then I realized the foot might actually be less painful than the butt of the gun.
Well done, Liberal David. Let's not use the foot, use the butt. I think we should say that's the name of the title today, use the butt. So basically, he then kicks him and then obviously subdues him. So now the whole viewpoint of the people are going back the other way, and there's a thing, right? So how much were this mass population controlled by that video that went viral, that was shot by an amateur? Number 1. 2, should the police have released that other image or those other videos sooner to prevent it? And 3, have the public become such armchair detectives or armchair audiences that they can influence what's happening in the world at the moment? And I found it fascinating.
Well, with the current tools that the public has, Tony, like TikTok, social media, they can, and for attention, they will. And when the public starts doing it, the news catches wind of it. Before the news had the option of creating the controversy, and often they did, but sometimes they didn't. But now if the public gets a hand of the video, they can spin it up before even a news network or a liberal or conservative radio presenter in the UK can be a talking head about it. And so should they? I mean, I don't know. Do you take away social media from the public because of this video? No. I just think people need to be educated and stop being idiots. But, that's a wishful thinking right there.
So the question sort of diluted itself until somebody asked a very prominent question. In the choices, so if you had a very black and white choice, should the media have waited until all the facts came out rather than publicize and push that narrative of that initial video and just waited, which is what kind of would have happened previously before the technology came about? Should they have gone on it without being like sided, which is what happened? With one or another person's viewpoint, or should they have done nothing and not taken stories from essentially a viral media? Because not everybody knew. It could have just come across as an attack or whatever or something. I mean, how many millions of viral videos go around every day? So it's just really interesting, and it's like, what happens now? Now the public are pushing so much that they're controlling the narrative of the news, and if you don't do it, then there's a conspiracy. If you do it, you leave the door open to this stuff. I just found it fascinating,
When Mark Zuckerberg and like the MySpace guy and these Instagram people and ByteDance in China, although China, the answer is probably yes, when they created these venues for this kind of like immediate sharing, immediate possibility of virality, there's just all these like ethical considerations about how it transforms society that I don't think a lot of these people who created these apps and created these platforms to share this stuff ever considered.
No, but how would you? I mean, it's gone so far from that inception point to where we are now. Could you have even thought about that? I guess a lot of them you could. They pay these guys big bucks for, future, projectionists and future sort of predictors. But I don't know. I just, where we always have this conversation where it's going to go, and it obviously has to peak somewhere, and it has to kind of plateau at some stage. But I don't know where we are on that curve. Are we right down the bottom, still heading up to that plateau? Are we nearing it? Where are we, man?
It's hard to say. But back to what I was saying, like I think Zuckerberg just wanted, like, I want to connect you with your friends and your social group and share photos. Like I don't. All these like unanticipated consequences come out of this. But now the TikTok is a huge avenue for video sharing, and that's owned by China. That's just another issue. Tony 5 is here. When we come back, we will discuss... What will we discuss?
Anal fissures, David. We've not spoken about it for a long time.
We'll be back with him. Tony 5 is here to discuss Wolverine, Wolverine and...
Wolverine.
Got it.
And Weeple.
And Deadpool. It's a new movie. I never saw those movies. I saw one of the Deadpool movies on a plane. But when you watch a movie on the plane, you only like half watch it. The screen's so small,
I went to see, Wolverine and Deadpool, which is the new Marvel franchise. It's been suffering. I know you're not into the Marvel films, are you, or anything like that? And
I lament that that's like the only kind of movie that gets released these days, because it needs to be like so huge that it'll make money, or it just goes right to streaming. Like there's something about those smaller films that were in the like $10 million budget that were dramas, and like they just don't exist anymore. So if you go to the theaters, it's like Wolverine versus Batman, Superman, Godzilla. Like it's all kind of action superhero
blockbusters. Yeah, you like the old German subtitled dark noir, not understanding art house films, and you could just tell by the way you smell that sort of film you like.
Not exactly, but yes,
100%. So this was a big movie. It had loads of cameos in it from various people, and people were going mad and dressing up and going to the cinema. I guess it's the same thing as in the States, where they do it a little bit more, where they all dress up and shoot at the screen and stuff like that. So I went to a midnight showing, and the Brits are not really effervescent as the US people, but there was one guy who was dressed up, and it was crazy because people were just taking photos with this guy, which I found quite surreal.
What was he dressed up as, Deadpool or Wolverine?
Yeah, he was, and I kept telling people he's in the wrong movie because that was the only movie on.
No, which of the two? I said Deadpool or Wolverine, and you said he was.
Yeah, Deadpool is the character he was dressed as, and he's like a mask, whatever.
Yeah.
And Wolverine's got these big old nails on him, and they're made of metal.
Yeah. And they make
it's quite fascinating. I mean, it bankrolls money, these things, but I think they got taken over by Disney midway through, and I think there was an issue where Disney just thought the best way to do things is quantity over quality, so just fired stuff out like every week.
Was something. It not good, or was it?
No. Oh. People got superhero fatigue, which was a name they made up based on the fact that there was so much stuff coming out. Which was sad, really. And so, yeah, you get all these comic book nerds coming out of their mum's basements and petitioning, and now they've gone back to their mum's basement and their mum's made them food, and they are happy, David, which is what we want.
Are you a comic book nerd? I never really got into them as a kid.
No, I'd watch them. I wouldn't say I'm a nerd. I'm not fantastical about them, but I'd go watch them and stuff like that. I think my favourite movie was, I guess, there's two. Coming to America, which I've always loved.
Yeah, you couldn't make that movie today. It's just too racist.
Oh my God. It couldn't make it. A fantastic film. And Interstellar, only because every time I've watched it, I've seen different things in it. And I guess that's a bit of a cliche movie. A lot of people like it, but I did like Interstellar. What about yours?
In Scotland, it's called Interstellar. I liked Interstellar. Probably my favorite movie ever. Maybe Arrival with Amy Adams. Have you seen that one?
No.
Oh, it's another sci-fi opera epic. It's based off of a short story by Tim...
Arrival. Sorry, I thought you said a rival.
I did. Arrival,
Arrival. Do you like that? That was like the one where it was backwards, wasn't it? And there's these monsters, not monsters, there were these aliens behind like a white screen.
Yeah,
that's a great film.
Ted Chiang is the author who wrote, and it was called The Story of Your Life. I have the short story book that it's in. The movie's better than the short story. But yeah, it's just so good. It's got aliens. It's got wonder. I love things to do with time, like time travel.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
You know, and Interstellar has a weird thing I was reading because they end up in a planet near a black hole. And because they're close to the black hole's gravity well, that time is warped so much that like 1 minute on the planet is like 1 day in real life. And so every minute they spend rescuing their friends, they're throwing away a day of time with their family. And there's kind of these ethical questions. Like if you're out in space and you fell into some gravity well near a black hole, and I could save you, you weren't past the black hole's event horizon where you can't be saved anymore. But I know by saving you, when I come back, all of my family are going to be dead.
Yes.
Do I save you? Or is it amoral to... I'm basically killing all my family to me if I save you.
Yes.
It's a deep moral question, and that is, it doesn't get so deeply touched upon, but it is in Interstellar, and I just thought that was really cool. I love sci-fi, Tony. I just totally went down a tangent, but
I know, you can see your nerdiness came out. I think your right hand was going towards your pants. I can't even see beneath your midriff, but
I have
you
a full
went
1 inch. Well, never mind. So that question though, have you heard of the trolley problem, Tony?
Yeah, I always get it because you need $1, don't you, to get into it at the supermarket or something. And I never have that, and it's always a massive problem. No idea how that's related to sci-fi or time travel.
I hate you. There's a train track with what do you call it? Like a junction, right? It goes left or it goes right. Okay.
Yes.
It's currently slated to go left.
Has someone put the $1 in first?
Someone's put the $1 in first. Okay, it's currently slated to go left. Okay.
Right. So your left or my left?
Your left, okay?
Fine. Wait. Let me just put myself there. You know, David, I love to be in the moment. I'm on the train. I've put my $1 in. I'm heading forward. I'm going left.
No, you're not on the train. Someone else is on the train.
Who's on the train?
You're standing at the junction. He
owes me a fucking $1 then, because I've just put the $1 in and he's on the train. So, all right, carry on.
So you're at the junction. You got a big lever. It's currently going to go left. If you pull the lever, it goes right. Are you with me?
Yes.
The way that it's currently going, it's going to run over 5 people. It's going to kill 5 people.
Right.
But you don't have to do anything, okay?
Okay.
You can pull the lever.
Yes.
And change the train's path, but then it will kill 1 person. So do you well, in this drawing that I have, it's a black and white drawing. So, I mean, yes, in this case. But the 5,
obviously,
the 5 people are black, and so are you at the junction, which again follows.
So we're all black. Where is this taking place?
It's, I guess, in Mauritius. I don't know.
Okay, fine. Well played.
But
so, right, we're in Mauritius.
Do you
We're on a train
consciously kill one person, or do you do nothing and through your own negligence allow 5 people to die?
track. Wow. Consciously kill one, unconsciously or It's not unconsciously because you are conscious of it. Consciously kill one, or by doing nothing, kill 5, yes?
Exactly, yeah. Do you actively play a role in the destruction of one person, or by doing nothing do you let 5 people die? It's an old dilemma. It's like a philosopher's problem, but I'm just saying it applies to Interstellar. If by saving you, I've basically allowed all my loved ones to die, because if I go to the planet near the black hole, time is going to pass 100 years or something.
Yeah, and
it'll take me a week to save you, but time will be so dilated that when I exit the black hole's gravity well, where the planet that you're stranded on is, everyone I know will be dead. Do I have an obligation to save you or not?
Okay, so that's option A. Then you got option B, which is don't save me.
It's interesting though, because it's interesting. Sorry, option A is don't save you and go and live my life and spend time with my wife and children. Okay.
Right, B?
Option B is I save you knowing that I could, but when I come back from saving you, everyone I know is dead because 100 years has passed. But no one got harmed.
And option C, you're with me for the rest of your life.
I guess, yeah. I mean, the person who's on the island will be obligated to have sex with you, which is nice.
Well, I know which option I'm taking.
Sorry, the person on the planet will be obligated to have sex with you. But yeah, it's an interesting, I don't know. I feel like you're not with me on this.
So what would you do then?
Well, you're not really. It's weird because my family's not being harmed, other than the fact that they're being deprived of me, the husband, and the father.
In all fairness, though, that would be a win for them.
That's true. But it's an interesting problem. I don't know. If it was a stranger on the planet, that's a really hard one.
That is. But then knowing your family and the way they think about you, I'm pretty sure they would mail in somebody to press that lever.
It's true. But I mean, all jokes aside, we have a couple more minutes. It's the gravity well trolley problem, basically.
Wow, that is quite a dilemma. I don't know what I'd do. Would I want to be complicit in the ending of one person's life and knowing that I'd have to live with it? I don't know. It's quite interesting, really, when you think about it, because it depends on what your viewpoint. But see, that you could argue depends on the relationship. So it's got all of these caveats around it. It's not completely independent. So if 2 of us was doing it, I guess we could argue, well, I don't really care about what this person thinks or whatever. So it's not like that. Well, you know that thing that they've got, is it Houdini's Rabbit, where they put that chicken in a box and they put some radioactive stuff in it? Pavlov's dog, innit? And then you don't know whether it's dead or alive at the same time. Duality and dark matter.
Schrodinger's cat, Tony.
That's the one, Houdini's Rabbit. I can't remember it fully.
I hate you, Tony. Thanks. What a pleasure. I would abandon you on the gravity well black hole planet for sure. No, I would save you.
Rude.
I would save you because I love you.
Doesn't have to be a black hole, David. African-American hole.
You know, there's such a thing as a white hole.
I bet there is, dirty boy.
Talk to my ex-wife about that. No, it's they're theoretical celestial objects, but they apparently just like eject light from, I don't know, the opposite of a black hole. I don't know enough about this stuff. Tony, thank you. We'll catch you tomorrow.
David, always a pleasure, never a chore. I'm going to call my ejaculation a white hole.
Tony 5, our foreign correspondent. When we come back, settling places like the moon and Mars might be easier than you think if we edit our genome to do it. That's at least what one researcher argues, who we'll speak to. So strap on, we're blasting off. If we want to establish human settlements on other planets, we may need to start using genome editing to modify our DNA. At least that's according to a recent article written by a doctoral researcher in history and philosophy of science at Manchester Metropolitan University. His name is Sam McKee. Sam, thanks for talking to me today.
Great to be with you, David. Thanks for having me.
So tell me about the article. What's your central thesis, as my old university professors would used to say? What are you trying to argue here that we need to do with our genome if we want to settle on places like the moon, Mars, and even elsewhere?
When people think about spacefaring and populating the solar system, they think that the technology that we need is going to be better rocket propellant, maybe perhaps more advanced spaceships or more advanced material science for habitats. But if you talk to a lot of the leaders in the field, the first thing they'll talk about is gene editing, which will surprise people, I expect. Look, space is a harsh environment, and if you're going to establish long-term habitats on Mars, you have to find a way for our fragile physiology to be able to endure long-term. I mean, you can go to Mars for a month and come back. More likely, you need to be there for 2 years plus. We need to think more outside of the box. And genome editing has become so cheap, so accurate, so available, so much more precise. I think we're at a point near now where science fiction is more likely to become science fact quicker than people think.
When I think about settling Mars, I think of either setting up elaborate bases with like a greenhouse that are sustainable, or I think sort of way out there, terraforming, which is converting a planet that's harsh to one that humans could live on. But that's a lot of effort. Is editing a tiny piece of DNA so that we could change our physiology to better be adapted to environments like that? Is that what you're trying to say? That's the easy thing to do? That's the reasonable thing to do, rather than trying to convert a whole planet to be a place where we could survive?
Well, it's not an easy fix, but it's definitely a lot quicker than terraforming. Nature has given us this really extraordinary toolbox. I tell people we're in a CRISPR world now. CRISPR-Cas9, the Nobel Prize was given in 2019 to Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier for it. We're in a CRISPR world now. You can do genome editing very precisely for a couple of dollars with high school lab equipment. And given the tandem advances in genomics, that people can sequence an organism's entire genome for less than $1,000 with a handheld device in the field in a few hours. It took us originally over 3 billion and 13 years. Things have moved on. We have this information available now where we can explore the genomes of archaea and bacteria that can eat radiation, plants that are radiation loving.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of tools in nature that can help life survive and thrive in harsh environments. And we've got the opportunity to explore how we can develop more resistant crops or plants that can grow faster and better in those extreme environments, and maybe even ethics allowing, make changes to ourselves.
So from this lens of genome editing and settling space or exploring space or staying in space for a long time, what do you think the key challenges that we're going to face as people, as a spacefaring species, if this is the route we're going to take to settle Mars, settle the moon, and elsewhere?
That's a big question. There are the technological challenges in terms of what we would find. I mean, the big challenge with CRISPR and base editing and prime editing is potential off-target effects, although that's getting better. Then you have the questions of the ethical challenges of how quickly can we get moving with this sort of thing, and what will people be willing to tolerate? What will society be willing to tolerate? Then you have the questions of which organism you're using. I mean, doing plant editing or editing on bacteria and archaea and looking to exploit those sorts of things is a lot quicker and easier than it would be, say, editing human being. But we're moving into an era of personalized medicine with this. It could go faster than we think. China could be willing to go a lot quicker than Canada or the USA would. So someone's going to open the box and move forward. And once someone does that, I think things will move quicker than people expect.
It's a bit off topic, but I was recently watching a video or a talk about how easy the equipment is to get to be able to edit genes. And, we wouldn't want people getting refined uranium from the internet, but the equipment to actually edit genes and do potentially dangerous stuff is available to really anyone.
It really is.
That's a bit off topic. What can we learn from water bears or tardigrades? Which I guess is to ask, are there any organisms on Earth that right now, as is, or with maybe a minor tweak, could survive the harsh environment of space?
Yeah, tardigrades, let's start with them. They are extraordinary. People would not believe they were real if you couldn't find them pretty quickly. There were some amazing experiments done on the International Space Station a few years back of exposing these tiny, quite ugly, frightening-looking creatures they're minuscule. but exposing them to the vacuum of space. And it's incredible to think that an organic life form could survive exposure to space, but these creatures do. I mean, cockroaches are no longer the most hardy resistant animals. It's tardigrades.
Tell that to my girlfriend. We killed one last night, and she could not sleep after that. But move on.
Oh, yeah! Congratulations. Yeah, tardigrades, they can survive low oxygen atmosphere and a high radiation atmosphere. They can survive the extremes of heat and cold of exposure to space. Their genomes are really interesting. I know there was an article in Nature a few years ago. Once we really got to know more about these organisms, there was a race to sequence their genome and find out what their genetic secrets were to this. There's a treasure trove of knowledge and potential data you can mine from that. Then, of course, there's bacteria and archaea that can survive radiation exposure and even enjoy it. If you think about a toxic disaster like an oil spill, we call on an army of microorganisms to clear that up for us. Mm-hmm. There's treasure there to be mined. If you can put some of those genes into your crops that you need to grow on Mars or even further out in the solar system, then you can engineer organisms that are far more resilient and resistant.
So in your view, what would a future look like where human genomes are edited for space travel?
Well, it is a lot left to the imagination when it comes to people at the moment, because that you can edit cancer cells and some human cells in a petri dish, and you can edit you can edit mice and that sort of thing. And that's about what you can do at the moment. But when we're looking towards personalized medicine, you're looking at genomic medicine, which you can go to any good university like Cambridge these days and do a postgraduate research in that. It's medicine tailored to the individual's genomic makeup. And once you go there, it's not too much of a stretch to go, okay, we can cure a person's ailments based on their genome. How can we help them suffer less in an extreme environment? Look at the genomes of people who live at extraordinarily high altitude in the Himalayas. Their genomic makeup is different enough in recognizable ways. So how can we tailor our own genomes to suffer less or maybe even thrive in really hard environments? That's a step beyond genomic medicine, but it's not a step really far. So I would imagine, maybe you're living on Mars or one of its moons, or maybe you're looking to move further out into the solar system, maybe on one of Saturn or Jupiter's moons. You would look at what are the potential threats to yourself there, and find ways to edit your own cells, much as people do perhaps with treating sickle cell disease at the moment, which is a live CRISPR research in the United States. And I mean, this is a lot here is the imagination, but finding ways to enhance your own genome to help you be more resilient in those extreme environments.
Sam, I'm not a big fan of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. FUD, I don't fear the unknown, but invariably, I'm sure when you have discussions like this or you write articles like this, people will say, what of the risks? So in your opinion, what are the main risks of this? Could this destroy humanity is always the question, and I think it's a ridiculous one, but what do you think the main risks of dabbling in this kind of science are?
A lot of the risk lies in the unknown. What we do know on the technical side is off-target effects. So if you're editing the genome with CRISPR or base editing or prime editing, you might be looking for a ATCG sort of repeat to make a cut in an edit in your genome there. Well, there could be loads of those repeats in your 3.1 billion letters of DNA. So you could invariably end up cutting the wrong place. And there is good work on minimizing off-target effects, but it is a way to go. Secondly, obviously, your genes aren't entirely you. You've got your environment as well. You have the epigenome. You have aspects of the proteome you'd need to understand. It's not just nature, it's nature plus nurture, as you know. It's environment as well as genes. And while you're doing this stuff on Earth, there's a lot you don't understand about what the effects would be in a world very different from our own. Then I suppose on the ethical effects, you have the concerns about what people would do with this technology. What's the line you don't want to cross? Where's the line you don't want to, the place you don't want to go? Because someone will be tempted to go there. And so as a society, we need to decide, leaning heavily on the expertise, but it's a conversation for everyone. Where do we want to go with this? But I love what Jennifer Doudna said in her book, A Crack in Creation, which I recommend everyone gets and reads about the discovery of CRISPR. There's the question of harm and the ethics of this is dangerous. But then there's the ethics of I have in my hand something that can help prevent harm, something that can help us thrive. And at what point is not using that then more unethical? And so there's two sides to the ethics question.
Why is it that our greatest discoveries can be used for good and evil? But I guess the solution is guardrails. Like, you wouldn't be doing nuclear research in your backyard. You wouldn't be playing with chemical weapons in your backyard. I hope that governments and regulators just help establish reasonable guardrails on this stuff so that it quite simply can't get in the hands of bad actors.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, nuclear weapons and materials are not as cheap as CRISPR is, but it definitely needs to be left to the experts rather than the science nerd in his garage.
Sam, thanks for talking to me today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
The article's called If We Want to Settle on Other Planets, We'll Have to Use Genome Editing to Alter Human DNA. That's published in The Conversation. I'm here with doctoral researcher in history and philosophy of science at Manchester Metropolitan University. His name, of course, Sam McKee. Visiting your family for the holidays. Easy when your family's all right, but kind of difficult when your family's a bit much. We'll talk to someone in a moment who wrote an article on just that. Well, we go through strategies for dealing with your annoying family. Is your family as annoying as mine? Do they want you to go home for the holidays, but when you do, it's a bit much? We're going to discuss that with someone who wrote an article for Vice on this very topic. She's a writer from Chicago. Her name is Jennifer Peepas. She writes the Captain Awkward Advice blog. Jennifer, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Do you have a family that's as annoying as mine, is my first question for you.
What's the Tolstoy quote? Like all happy families are alike, all unhappy families are uniquely alike, something like that. My family is I don't know how to compare it because I don't know your family, but I have periods where like I feel like we've been really tight and periods when we've been not so tight.
Yeah.
And like I don't live near them. That's probably better for everyone.
I put a border between me and my mother. They're up in Canada. And like I used to be in California from Toronto. I think that's like 3,000 miles, which to me was like, I still could feel her breath on my neck, but it was like, good distance, good healthy distance.
I feel like now that I think we're all older, I think everyone's kind of mellowed and we're just sort of like, oh, like when we hang out, we like it. Like we try to make it pleasant and we like it. But when I was much younger, I feel like I went away to college, I moved away for work. And whenever I went home, it's like we would have all the arguments. Like everyone had been saving up arguments all year to have them. And it would be like all my vacation time, all my money to buy the plane ticket. And then I'd be going home and it would just be to hear like all the ways that I'm like disappointing and failing and not quite measuring up. And then they'd be like, why don't you visit more? And it's like, because it sucks when I come here.
My ex-wife and I always used to say, whatever the trip is, however good it sounds, however nice the visit may be, quote, it's not worth it. That was our kind of like general rule with my family.
I think it took me sort of going away and sort of just setting that boundary of just like, I love you and I want to hang out with you and see you and be together. But like, I'm not really like looking for an audit of my choices or personality. Like every time we interact, like, can we just hang? Could you pretend that I'm someone you like? And like, could we just like have that interaction as like people who like each other and want to see each other and not like, this is your chance to parent an adult into being the person that you wish they would be.
Oh, I like that.
And so it took some time. And also it's my I have a sibling. I have one sibling that I really get along with, and one that I just don't.
Yep.
And so it wasn't just parents. It was like if my younger sibling was home, that was also like the visit would be a show because of that, because like he's just a conflict, chaos demon, and like he just causes conflict to erupt all around him all the time. So even if it wasn't directed at me, it would just be like, why am I here?
I am exactly the same way. My eldest brother and I don't get along, and my other two siblings and me do get along. Let's go through your list from your article that you wrote for Vice a while ago.
Oh, sure.
Which is like how to go home even when your family is like yours or mine. Step number 1, and I love this one. If you are in fact going, be conscious of why you're going, you know? For me, it's like I used to spend a lot of time with them. I would feel awful afterward. And then I made the shift that you're recommending, which is like, okay, I do it on my terms when I feel it's appropriate. And if it's a situation that's going to leave me or be fraught with conflict, I'm not going to that. I like this first step.
And I think the most important part of it is like, you don't have to go. Like no one can make you go. So if you're choosing to go, like you must have a reason. And so just make sure you know what that is and get out of the mindset, especially if you're an adult, that you have to go. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You could decide just to be like, no, I'm skipping it this year. And like they might feel things and be mad, but like everyone will live through that decision. Like no one's going to die because of that decision. So like if you're making the choice to go, like just have that reason in mind.
I like it. Yeah. I feel like with really tightly knit families, that first time you say no to something, it feels like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. But you can say no to kind of take care of your own mental health or avoid situations that you know are going to end badly. Step number 2, plan ahead, enlist your allies. I like that. Like I have my younger brother. I mean, he's older than me, but he's younger than my older brother, whatever. I call him my younger brother. He's the middle brother. He's kind of my ally. And so like for a time when I was fighting with my parents a lot, I wouldn't show up to stuff unless I knew he was there to kind of help, to buffer, that sort of thing.
Exactly. I end up writing a lot about like family estrangement. People write me letters about it a lot. And especially like queer, trans people, people where there's a huge political divide, and they're very worried, understandably, about going home to like non-supportive family. And the thing I always say is like, your family is not a monolith. It's a group of people. If every single person at your family reunion is hostile to you, then that seems like a pretty like don't go decision. Like that's kind of an easy decision. But your family is not a monolith, and the worst people in your family don't speak for everyone in your family. So make sure you reach out to the people that you can count on to help you through, that you want to see, the people that you miss, the people that you trust to just be chill and want to hang out. And like don't accept the fact that the meanest people are the ones who get to make all the decisions about.
I like number 3 because I do this to this day, even though I get along way better with my parents now than I did, say, 5-10 years ago. Create sanctuary wherever and however you can. When I visit home, when I visit Toronto, my parents always ask, are you going to stay with us? They got a room. I have not stayed with them in the last 10 years. I'm lucky enough to have a brother that's got a small guest room. I always stay with my brother because I will not enjoy spending time with my parents if I have to stay with them. Because then the kinds of little comments, the suggestions, hey, you should do this with your career, that you should do this with your life. When are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? I'm going to go nuts just listing these things. That'll happen. But if I stay with my brother, then it's just like a dinner here or there or coffee here and there. And it's a way that I can sort of create a sanctuary in the relationship with my parents and have a good relationship with them as opposed to staying with them. That'll be the end of it.
Even if my family were like the perfect beings, I'm just a hardcore introvert. So even if it had nothing to do with the other people around me, I just need a certain amount of solitude to feel okay. And I need to be able to, if I'm sort of amping up to be around people a lot of the time in a way that I'm not used to doing, Like, I just need that retreat of like, I can do this for 6 hours and have a good time and talk to everybody. But at the end of that, I'm going to go starfish in a cold room, like a cold, silent, dark room where no one can perceive me. And like, I have ADHD, so like neurodivergence and like being around people involves a lot of masking, right? Like just psyching myself up to be able to pay attention to conversations and follow the threads of things. And it's an energy. It just takes a lot of energy. So just knowing that I have a way to recharge that energy, and that they're like, I do stay with my family when I go home, like, but like that I have my own room, that I can I can decide to just be someone who goes to bed super early every night. Like,
Yeah.
And just build that time, take walks outside, just, be the person. My brother and I, like, anytime there would be a fight, my older brother and I would be like, are we out of milk? Hey, I think we need to go get milk. And I would just bail and like go get milk.
Yeah. It was smoking for my siblings and me when we were younger, but now we don't smoke. So, you know.
And maybe it takes us 45 minutes to get the milk, but you know.
I like this last one that we'll have time for. Realize that some people might not be able to be decent to you, but you can be decent to yourself. I feel like this is my first psychiatrist when I'm 18 saying, you got to take care of yourself. I'm just picturing this old Jewish man who's probably dead, my old shrink, saying that to me. That's so true. The wider point here is you can't control others' behavior. You can't control your family's behavior, the way they treat you, but you can control your own, and you can always be kind to yourself no matter how awful somebody is.
Just, you can decide, like, it's not worth having certain arguments if it's not going to change anyone's mind and you want to protect your own energy. You can also decide that, like, all right, if you want to spend this time arguing, then like, let's argue. You can meet people with the same energy they bring you if that's what you want to do. But yeah, you can't control how people will treat you, but you can sort of take steps to take care of yourself. And just knowing how people are likely to behave and sort of doing things to protect yourself against that, like making sure you have support and an out if you need it, or sanctuary if you need it. But also just like giving people a chance to surprise you, which is really what you're doing when you're showing up in a place where you don't know how it's going to go. You're sort of, it's an investment in hope of like, our relationship might not be the best, but I'm hoping that this time we make a good memory to push some of the bad stuff down. Yeah.
Wow. Well said. That's honestly, that process, a little by little over time, is how I get along with my folks well now. Jennifer, thanks for this discussion. It was nice to chat with you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm here with writer Jennifer Peepas in Chicago. She writes the Captain Awkward advice blog. You can check that out at captainawkward.com. Jennifer, thank you again. I appreciate the chat.
All right, my pleasure. Thank you.
Astronomy of the big and astronomy of the small. That's what we're going to cover with a science nerd coming up. We'll start out with a new element created by a particle beam. What does it mean? Stay with me to find out. We are here to discuss physics, the very big, the very small. Going very small, we're going to talk about a new element that was created using a particle beam, which I definitely know what that means. Spoiler, I don't, but our guest does know what it means. He's a graduate from the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada, in physics and astronomy, and he's a programmer, a game development hobbyist, and a lifelong learner. I feel like we stripped that bio from your LinkedIn, didn't we, Ben?
Sounds like maybe, yeah.
I got to say your full name, though. Ben Nichol. That's it. Okay, cool. Particle beams. I'm just picturing a laser. Let's start here. What is a particle beam before we get to the new element that was created by one?
Yeah, so all a particle beam is, and in this case, it's a titanium particle beam. And all that means is that you've taken some amount of titanium and you've heated it up, you've superheated it, and then you do a couple of other things to get it into a cyclotron and spin it around incredibly quickly and then smash it into things in this particular case.
What do you mean a couple things? Like a dash of salt, a shake, maybe a pinch of black pepper? What I feel like the devil's in the details here. How do you get a beam of titanium particles that hot and going that quickly?
All you're doing whenever you're making a beam of titanium in this case is heating up a chunk of titanium in this particular case. to nearly 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And then you bombard it with a bunch of microwaves, a type of radiation, removing a bunch of its electrons. And then you sort of get these ions accelerated at a cyclotron, which is where you sort of spin them around faster and faster and faster, which, imparts more and more energy into them. And then you sort of smash them into things. And the way that you kind of keep everything in a nice sort of beam is with magnets.
Cool. Always with the magnets.
As with many things, magnets are the wizards.
Magnets, how do they work? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
What's that? What is that band?
Insane Clown Posse, I think. Yeah.
They ponder the universe in magnets, which I love. Why do scientists want to do this? Why might I want to speed up a titanium particle beam? What would I be hoping to find?
Well, in this case, what scientists were doing is they were speeding up this particle beam of titanium and sort of bombarding plutonium atoms with it. And what they were hoping to do there is to create a much heavier element. In this case, they succeeded in creating element 116, or livermorium. And anytime a new element is created, or we find another method to create an element that's already being created, it's really exciting because it's like creating a new building block for nature. It's a new Lego piece for your set. Some Lego pieces are more useful than others. The simple square block is very, very handy. That might be something like carbon, and then this livermorium thing is some weird, maybe wacky shape that doesn't fit very many places, but is still good to have in your collection.
Is it a stable element, or is it like highly radioactive? It exists for a brief second and then it decays into lighter atoms, or lighter elements, like other elements that are high up on the periodic table?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it is not at all a stable element, and to even say a brief second would be overstating how long this thing lives. The longest living isotope of livermorium lasts for just, I think, under 100 milliseconds. So,
that's fast. That's longer than my first marriage, which is exciting. but maybe just as explosive and violent.
Yeah, well, hopefully you didn't. There was no spontaneous fission there, and you maybe saw it coming.
Perhaps. Okay, so this thing exists for a brief second. Why do scientists want to discover new elements like this? Like, what is the benefit? What do we have to learn? Why might this be something that you would want to do in the first place?
Sure. In this particular case, livermorium is an element that has been synthesized before. This isn't the first time we've done that. But what's sort of unique about this is the titanium beam. Previously, we were using a calcium beam. I say we as if I had anything to do with this particular project, but physicists were using a calcium beam. And that's all well and good, but titanium is a little bit heavier. And all that means is that potentially whenever we bombard, these heavy elements with these beams, the heavier the particles in the beam, the heavier the resultant element might be. And livermorium is element 116. And those of you who have looked at a periodic table recently may notice that element 118 is sort of the highest it goes. And researchers are thinking that with this new method, we might be able to achieve element 120, which would be a really interesting breakthrough on sort of new element development. We haven't seen a new one in a very long time.
So 116 named livermorium. When I look at a periodic table with the sort of like shaded squares where 120 would be, it's just called element 120. Is the main joy from discovering this thing and synthesizing it for a split second in the lab the fact that you get to name it?
See, I personally like to think so. Me personally, my last name is Nichol, so if I ever happen to discover an element, I unfortunately can't use that because Nichol is already an element. But I wish the scientists that are working on this good luck in getting their name immortalized on the periodic table.
So they call this field the super heavy element research field. Yes. Are there any practical applications that have come out of research like this, or is it like science for science sake, and maybe some applications will come in the future? Like we want to do it, but it's not like we're looking for something that's going to unlock, I don't know, some form of nuclear fission or some form of jet propulsion or some fancy new thing like this.
Yeah. So what a lot of the reason why scientists are looking into these sort of super heavy elements is they're looking for something called the island of stability. which is sort of a small area that is, beyond the current periodic table by just a few elements, where the elements will begin to become a little bit stable again. Nothing too crazy, nothing like, good old carbon-12, which, kind of has a lifetime forever. But, as you go up the periodic table, things become less and less stable. You get to your uranium, and then you get even further, you get to californium, you get even further, right, to this livermorium, which decays in a tenth of a second. But there is going to be a point where it goes back up a little bit, and that point potentially could be 120, and that's just because of the number of protons and neutrons in the nucleus. They're called magic numbers. In particular, the number of protons in element 120 would be a magic number, and they tend to be a little bit more stable. So we would expect to see this element be a little bit more stable and sort of form a small island of stability is what they're calling it.
How can they know that if they haven't synthesized them yet, or they've as yet been discovered in nature? How can scientists be certain that as you go higher up, you get a little bit more stability than you did a little bit lower, like with this element 116 or livermorium? Or is it just they're pretty sure, the models predict it, but they can't be 100% sure?
Sure. This is a bit beyond my expertise, but as I understand it, the protons in a nucleus exist in what are called shells, and elements that have full shells tend to be very stable. Lead is a really good example. In particular, one isotope of lead has a full shell of protons and a full shell of neutrons. So that's called like doubly magic, and it's one of the most stable elements, or isotopes rather, in the universe. And so when we have a full shell, which would be the case for element 120, it would have a full shell of protons. Just by looking at every other element that has a full shell, saying, oh, this element that we already know exists is very stable and has a full shell, we're kind of expecting to see something similar with 120. The exact sort of, quantum mechanical reasons for what's going on there, the super deep math, are a bit beyond my expertise. But yeah, as far as a pattern, that's what we've been seeing so far.
Cool. It's sort of like, what do they call them? The noble gases, like as they trend towards a certain size, they start to get more stable again?
Yeah, it's a very similar. It's a similar idea. With the noble gases, that has to do with the number of electrons, and then like reactivity with other elements. Whereas this has to deal more with the number of protons and just the stability of the nucleus itself. But yeah, it's very similar.
Cool. Well, we're talking about physics and astronomy. We're talking the very small, and we're going to go to the very big. Well, at least very big in the planetary scale, because astronomers have detected a rare, huge super Jupiter planet. That sounds like a party to me. Using the James Webb Telescope, I am here with Ben Nichol, who's a PhD student. He's a graduate from the University of Waterloo in physics and astronomy. And when we come back, super Jupiters and also hot Jupiters. Super and hot. I mean, that's not too bad. We'll be back. We're here talking physics, the very small, the very big. Now we're going to talk the very big. Using the James Webb Telescope, astronomers have detected a very rare, huge super Jupiter planet. We're going to discuss that with Ben Nichol. He's a graduate from the University of Waterloo in physics and astronomy. Ben, welcome back.
Yeah, it's great to be back. Good to see you again.
So, super Jupiters. Before we talk about this specific one that has been discovered by James Webb, is that just a very good Jupiter with superpowers?
Yeah, it can fly through space and everything, but I suppose normal Jupiter does that too. So yes. Maybe it's not that extraordinary.
Why do we compare other planets to Jupiters? Is it just a size thing?
Yeah, when we say Jupiter-like planets, we're talking about planets that are gas giants around the size of Jupiter, and when we say super Jupiters, we're usually talking about just bigger gas giants than Jupiter.
Okay, well, let's talk about this one. It orbits a star called Epsilon Indi A, which is an orange dwarf, which is not exactly like Donald Trump because he's tall, but you get the point. I'm not sure what the point is. Maybe you don't get it. I don't get it. Not important. Tell me about this planet and why is the discovery significant?
Sure, yeah. So this planet is really was discovered with a method that is sort of called the wobble method, is what some people will call it. And all that means is that whenever a planet's orbiting a star, you may have heard that when an object is acting on another object, with a force, then that object is acting on the first object with the equal and opposite force. That's true in orbital mechanics too, so this planet's orbiting this star, and the star is also orbiting the planet. That's actually true with Earth and the Sun too. It's true that Earth orbits the sun, but it's also true that the sun orbits Earth in a sense. They were right about that like 1,000 years ago, but not in the way they thought they were. So in the system of the Earth and the sun, the bare center, that's the point sort of where they're both orbiting, is pretty close to the center of the sun. So, to a good approximation, the Earth is orbiting the sun, but, the sun does still have a bit of influence put on it by the Earth. And in this particular case, because the planet is so big, the influence that it has on its star is greater. And we can actually see that from really far away. So we see that whenever the planet is on one side of the star, the star is moving in one direction, and when the planet's on the other side of the star, it's moving in another direction. And we can kind of see that little orbit happening. And we use something that is everybody kind of has heard of, the Doppler effect, right? Whenever you have an ambulance going by, when it's coming towards you, it's sort of higher pitch, and then when it's going away from you, it's sort of lower pitch. That same principle happens with light as well. So, whenever the star is being influenced towards us, we see the light shifted a little bit to be a higher frequency or more blue. And whenever the star is moving away from us, we see the light shifted to a lower frequency or more red, and we can kind of detect that. And it's actually incredible how well we can to just 3 meters per second. We can tell that there's motion going on.
Wow, we can look all the way out there to a distant planet, distant star, distant galaxy, and have it accurate to up to 3 meters per second.
Yeah, 12 light years away in this particular case, and we can see up to 3 meters or minimum 3 meters a second. It's quite crazy, right?
Wild. That is crazy.
Yeah, so we sort of saw that motion happening in this planet here, and sure enough, we looked a little closer, and there was a large planet happening.
Cool. Well, let's talk about this planet, because it was a lot larger than scientists expected. The article that I read about it mentions it as rare. Why is this? Why have we not discovered planets this big, or what's so unique about this one?
We have discovered planets this big before. The sort of unique thing about this one is it's really close. 12 light years, while that sounds really far, because it kind of is for our monkey brains, but 12 light years is actually really close on the cosmic scale. And so what's kind of exciting about this one is that, hopefully, because of its proximity, we'll be able to do different kinds of tests on it and sort of discover more about it and about that particular star system and its dynamics there.
It's wild that whenever we look closely at stars, we find that there's planets. There's so many planets. There's way more planets than we thought.
Yeah.
I know this one in particular isn't a good candidate for life. The gravity too much, the fact that it's a gas giant, it would look and seem and have conditions nothing like Earth. But is it possible that this system could then harbor an Earth-like planet, and it could sort of have a similar planet distribution to the solar system that we live in? Is that a possibility?
It potentially could. So it's orbiting, as you mentioned, an orange dwarf star. They're a little bit cooler than the sun, but generally somewhat similar, and aren't sort of these red giants that'll have all this crazy activity going on that will wipe out life every few thousand years when a huge solar flare hits or whatever. It's a reasonably stable star, and it certainly could be possible that there could be a Earth-like planet, although as far as I know, one has not been discovered around it thus far.
Cool. Well, it's the age-old dating question. Would you rather be super, like a really great person, or be really hot? We're going to go hot now. It's a discovery of a planet, or is it a star, called TIC 24124953OB. These astronomers got to get on the naming train a little better than that. But another planet was discovered, and this one is a so-called hot Jupiter. What are hot Jupiters?
Yeah, so hot Jupiters are, it's actually, one very rare case where astronomers kind of name things pretty well, unlike the star system name that you just read out there. It's just kind of a Jupiter-sized planet that is close enough to the star that it is incredibly hot. Now, generally, hot Jupiters have the property that they are very close to their star, orbiting with a very tight orbit around their star, so that they're always kind of getting heat from the star and are able to stay hot. But this one is kind of interesting because it is a very eccentric orbit. And by that, I just mean that the orbit isn't really that circular. Now, those of you who are a little bit well-read on sort of orbital stuff, you'll know that orbits are actually never circular. They're always a little bit elliptical. But this orbit is very elliptical. It actually takes the hot Jupiter in this case goes out from around Earth's distance to the sun from its star and goes all the way into 10 times closer than Mercury to its star. So it goes out from quite far to very, very close. So when it's super far out, is a little cooler, and then when it gets super close, it gets very hot. But what we're expecting to see, not in our lifetimes, but in the next million years, what we're expecting to see is the orbit sort of decay into this very close orbit that we've come to expect from hot Jupiters, and that is very fascinating because we've sort of wondered for a while just how these hot Jupiters get these orbits that are so close. So we might actually be seeing one happen in real time. I say real time, but it's slower than glacial, but real time on an astronomical scale, where we're seeing this orbit maybe decay into a hot Jupiter, possibly.
So we're sort of left with clues about how these formation processes work. We see a bunch of these hot Jupiters. They're in a really tight orbit, but now we've discovered one that has a very eccentric orbit. And I guess the theory is, well, maybe all of them start out this way, or this is one way in which they can get their tight orbit. We don't have the ability to kind of like look back in time at these planets, so we're just left wondering how they form. Is that kind of why it's so significant?
Yeah, exactly. And it would be like someone who only lived for say 1 hour on Earth, and they saw the sun move a little bit across the sky, and they thought, I've heard about these sunset things happening, and maybe if I lived like 10 more lifetimes, I might actually see one. Maybe it's because the sun's moving across the sky that someday it'll set beyond the horizon. It's sort of what we're seeing now. We'll only live for like a tiny fraction of this orbit happening, but or orbit decay happening. But if we live for 1,000 more lifetimes, we might actually see it fully converge into a hot Jupiter's more typical orbit.
Well, if we got a good enough telescope, as we look at the sort of edge of observable space, we could look into history of galaxies that are very far away, because galaxies that are far away are earlier in their, lifespan. But we would need a pretty good telescope to see a planet in a distant galaxy, wouldn't we?
Yeah, that's a bit of an engineering question at this point. And maybe you'll figure that out. Maybe you'll make a telescope that'll be able to see planets in a distant galaxy.
I am unlikely to do that, Ben, but maybe I will. You never know. I could bang my head and become a genius.
I believe in you.
I think that has happened to people in recorded history, where they get in some accident and then they become a genius. Usually it's the other way around, though, I got to say.
Maybe, but hey, you know what? Maybe you'll be the exception.
Ben, thank you for chatting with me today about Jupiters and particle beams. I really do appreciate your time.
Yeah, it was great to be on. Thanks again for having me.
Ben Nichol is a graduate from the University of Waterloo in the Physics and Astronomy department. In just a few moments, our intern, Zach Zhang, is going to talk about how his generation, the Gen Zs, or Gen Zs in Canada, are yearning for those pre-digital dating days. When you had to ask people out in person. Based on an article in The Guardian that claims just that. We'll get our Gen Z intern's opinion in a moment. We are here with our intern, Zach Zhang, to discuss an article in The Guardian titled as follows: Gen Z yearns for the pre-digital dating era, but don't ask them out in person. I guess you're representing the Gen Zs, or as they say in Canada, Gen Z, Zach.
Yes, I will be representing the Gen Z. Only one thing I would change about that article: do ask us out in person, because we are tired of texting. We are just tired of texting, please. That's
the central thesis, that you guys are jealous of us from the era where you asked people out in person. I grew up where if you had a girlfriend or boyfriend on the internet that you met, you were weird. You were very strange. Like at a party, you'd be like, "Oh, there's Anne over there. She met her husband on a chat line." And like that was to be made fun of. I had a cousin who met two of her husbands online. And I remember growing up 10, 12, 13, everyone in my family was talking about her like she was the odd one in the room. And boy, have times changed.
Oh, I actually completely relate to that. While I was growing up, instead of like dating online, I guess it was a similar way of where you would be dating through video games and stuff like that. Do you remember a game called Club Penguin?
I don't, but that's how my cousin met people on video games.
Exactly. It's kind of similar like that. So we would also get clowned on stuff like that. And I would obviously clown people for doing stuff like that too, because it was just kind of cringy. But I mean, but nowadays, isn't that all it is? It's just online dating, meeting people online? How times have changed.
It used to be when you didn't know anyone, you could use like a video dating service, or you could put out an ad in the personals on a newspaper, and that seems so strange. And so I think that was the frame from which people looked at online dating at first. Mm-hmm. Me and Miranda met on Tinder in 2012. I think that was around, for me, at least in my community, the tides were changing where it was slightly less odd. But I was a little embarrassed about it at the time. But now it's just like so obvious to people that they would meet on apps, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so much more commonplace, and I just feel so out of place because I personally don't use those apps for two reasons. One, I don't take a lot of photos, so I can't really set up a profile anyway. And two, I don't really think my personality really translates out to text like that. So for the people who are good texters and can actually meet people online like that, I envy them because I can't do that. You know, I like meeting people in person, seeing their personality and stuff like that. But a lot of people have found success on dating apps like yourself, like some of my friends even, and I guess that's just how it is now. I just gotta adapt to the times.
Gotta adapt. With the internet, they say the odds are good, but the goods are odd on the dating apps.
I like that.
Are your friends, your young 20-somethings friends, like on the south side of 25, I think you all are, and you guys are fed up with dating? Like, what are your friends saying about the apps?
They're just tired of people not making the effort to actually take it off the app. Like, I don't think they actually have a problem texting the other person. It's just that when they try to bring it off of the initial dating app, they just start getting less interested. And I'm not really sure about why that is. It seems kind of like the opposite reaction if you're asking me, because you're trying to go on a dating app to find a partner or a relationship, but you're not trying to bring it off of the dating app to get to know each other more. I don't know. It's just kind of weird for me. To them, they kind of feel the same way because they just want to go out and do something. They don't want to just keep talking back and forth. They don't want to just keep typing long paragraphs and to eventually get ghosted again. You know what I mean?
I do. I feel like some people are on those apps not necessarily to date. They're looking for the absolute perfect person in their mind who probably doesn't exist, or they're just looking for validation. Like they have 100 matches. They vaguely converse with all of them. They're never really willing to meet up with them because they're always looking for that 101st match who might be a little better. There's a name for this. Breadcrumbing? Is that a thing?
If it isn't, now it is. We'll coin that.
No, it is. That means like leaving little bits for people to like stay interested, but really not enough. Not leaving the whole bread, Zach.
I see. Yeah, I don't really have experience with dating apps, so I can't really speak on that. But based on just the way my friends talk about it, it seems like their interests do align with mine anyways. We just want to talk to people, man. We want to meet them. Like the good old days, we talk about how the pandemic really changed our ways of communicating with one another. We all rely on texts now. We all are more wary of each other, which is a good thing. There are a lot of creeps out there, but it's gone to a point where we can't even meet each other until like 10 months of texting or something, or like 6 months of texting.
When I was a kid, I didn't have a cell phone till I was 20. Now, some of my friends started getting them around 18, 19, but when I was a teenager, no cell phones. So if you were meeting somebody somewhere and they were late or they didn't show or they bailed, like, you didn't know what was going on. Like, you'd just be waiting at the coffee shop forever. I miss those days. I miss, like, going to a new city and having to print out, like, the instructions. There was no Google Maps back then. It was MapQuest. You'd print out the instructions, and if you made a wrong turn, you were screwed.
You just had to get up and go for it.
Unless you had, like, a big old map. Do you really yearn for those days? Because there's some benefits to them. You really felt like you were alone a lot more. Not in the, like, loneliness sense, just in the, like, when you're out in public, you're on your own. You don't have access to everything, everyone, every bit of information that can orient you, connect you, figure out what's going wrong. It was kind of nice. It's like a modern society version of camping in the woods, having no cell phone.
I like that description. Having no cell phone, just exploring the city around you, having to meet people just like that, or meet different life forms, I guess, in terms of camping, I suppose.
Which you can recreate now, but everyone else has phones. Back then, no one did.
Yeah. Yeah, I got my first phone maybe like grade 10, so I was like maybe 15, 16 at that time. Slightly earlier than yours.
But phones were around.
Yeah, phones were already around. We already had the technology to do Google Maps and everything. I don't necessarily think I'd miss having that technology gone. Maybe it would cause more curiosity and creativity in me to just explore and stuff, but I think having navigation is pretty crucial here. But just in the aspect of not having phones to socialize or not having a really valid means to communicate, I do kind of yearn for that too, because once again, I think your truest personality shines when you're face to face with somebody.
Yeah.
And just being able to have that experience again without any kind of worry about, oh, am I going to get sick? Or, oh, is this person a freaking creep or something? I miss those days, you know? Like, you could just go up and compliment someone without them thinking you're a little creep.
Really? I always thought that was creepy. I don't know.
I don't know. I'd say it's compliment specific. Like, if I compliment your shirt or compliment your shoes, I think it's fine. But I'm not going like, damn, you got a big something or something like that. You know, you're looking voluptuous today, shawty. Like, I'm not trying to do any of that stuff.
You're looking voluptuous today. Is that your go-to pickup line, Zach?
No, there's a funny story behind that line, but I'll tell that another day, I think.
Okay. You mentioned a friend of yours was on Hinge and unhappy with it?
Yeah, he just got kind of bored. He was out on a holiday. He was out vacationing, and then he randomly decided to get Hinge, try to talk to girls, and he did. He was talking to maybe one or two, but he soon got very tired of texting them and just contemplated deleting his entire profile. And when we asked why, he's just like, well, I want to do something with them, you know, like I don't want to just stay on the phone, but they don't want to take it off the phone, so I might as well just leave them alone. And you know what? That's fair enough.
Where do people go for a date these days? Like a cornfield, a zoo, a park?
I don't even know. You know what? Maybe Ripley's Aquarium.
Oh, that could be good. My friend Samantha was on the show saying the ideal first date spot is an arcade, which I love. I'm going to take Miranda to an arcade. I've just decided.
I think that would be a really fun date idea. It's a good way to explore each other's personality as well, just based on the games you play, how you react and stuff.
Do you yearn for the days pre-internet where you could just, I don't know, pick up people at bars, meet somebody through a friend, everything wasn't so app-based?
Yes, I do. Mainly because, once again, not a great texter. I cannot translate my personality well, but two, it's just so much better seeing each other face-to-face, meeting someone like that. You build such a stronger emotional connection. You feel so much more valued like that as well.
Zach, you are valued working on this show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Of course, David, anytime.
Zach Zhang, he's our intern. That's the show. Thanks for listening. I'll be back tomorrow, and you have yourself a merry little day.